Welcome back everyone, I'm John Jardin from Agilit-e, and in this video I'm going to show you how to create a Kubernetes cluster. We're finally at the point where we're going to create the cluster itself. So let's jump right in. We're going to go straight to our cheat sheet on GitHub, and if you haven't been following, you can just go to github.com and go and search for cheat sheets, or just go and find our entity name Agilit-e Hub and you will find the repo. And what you're looking for is Microsoft Azure Kubernetes setup. And we've already done these few over here. We've in the previous video we finished up setting the service principal. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create the Kubernetes cluster without AD enabling it, which is fine. It's the default for now. There is an option to AD enable the Kubernetes cluster, which means that with a lot of the operations that you perform, you will first need to perform a single sign-on authentication and various other things. But for now, we're just leaving it without AD enabling the process. Right, so create Kubernetes cluster. We're going to be performing these two commands over here. So let's start with this one, and we're just going to go ahead and copy this. It's quite a long one, and you can see over here I've also made a note that this does take around 10 minutes to run, and I'll explain it once I've got it inside our terminal in Visual Studio. So I'm just going to paste the command here, and I'm going to go and update these values quickly, and then we can discuss them. Okay, so what I have over here is a very long command, but let's just quickly go through it. So we are going to create the Kubernetes cluster. We are assigning it to the resource group of Agilit-e with a node count of 1. And the cluster name itself is going to be cluster Agilit-e. The location is West Europe. The service principal is the app ID we got in the previous video. I did tell you to make note of the app ID and password, so please, I hope that you did that. Just provide the app ID here. Then the client secret is the password from the previous command from the previous video. We are going to set the node VM size is to standard DS1v2. It's not the default. If you didn't provide this property, it would provide the DS2v2 option, which if you're not careful is I think double the cost of the standard DS1. And in the case of us here, just setting up a sort of a development environment and getting it running, the standard DS1 v2 is more than sufficient. So you have to override that value if you otherwise you're going to go with the DS2 option. And then we generate the necessary SSH keys, which will be stored locally, which will allow us to perform kubectl commands to our Kubernetes environment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this command. It does take about 10 minutes to run. I'm going to pause the video over here. I will see you 10 minutes later. So welcome back everyone. It did take around 10 minutes on my side, but the process completed successfully, and at this point we now have a Kubernetes cluster set up and running. So the next step, what we're going to do now is we're just going to go and set up the credentials in our local kube config, and that will conclude this video and leave one more video left for us to finally test and get the Kubernetes dashboard launched in our browser. But before we get there, let's first go and get our credentials into our local kube config. So here's the command for this. What we're going to do is we're going to copy this. It's not too long of a command, and I'm going to clear this over here, and I'm going to go and paste this and quickly just go and update these values. Alright, so you can see over here, it's AKS get credentials. So the resource group is Agilit-e, and the cluster name is cluster Agilit-e, and we just overwrite any existing credentials in the event there were. This is a handy parameter to add to this command, especially if you've run this more than once and the credentials did change. So let's go ahead and hit this command. Right, and it's confirmed it's merged cluster Agilit-e as the current context in our local kube config. So if you installed the Kubernetes extension in Visual Studio Code, you should see an icon on the left hand side over here, and if we go ahead and click on that icon, on top of here by clusters, I've got a few on my side, but you should only have one at this time. You should see cluster Agilit-e. And the little icon on the left hand side here shows that it is currently active. We can actually use this to expand the cluster, but that confirms that the credentials have been loaded locally into our kube config, and from here we can now use this extension to perform various operations on our Kubernetes environment. But that's all we're going to discuss in this video. We've got one more left that will come soon, and that is where we will just go and set up 1 or 2 privileges and finally launch the Kubernetes dashboard. So until then, cheers.